Boom. What? All right. I don't know if this is working. I feel like I haven't done this for so long that I'm probably going to screw something up. But if you're here, you are on the C47's YouTube channel. This is a live stream, and we're going to chat about stuff. Brandon is here. DJ Suckertash is here. Welcome. It would be great to know if picture and sound are both clear and there are no issues with that. Confirmation on that would be great. That hasn't changed. And I feel like it has not been years, David Carroll, but it has been what is seemingly years. So let me know if the sound is not only clear, but loud enough, if the picture is clear. I know it's in focus, so that part I've got. And it's good to be doing a live stream because it's been a long time since, at least on this channel, we have chatted about things related to production and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, there you go. Um, I think we're just gonna do it. Come on. What means? What do you mean crowned and number one? What is all this chatting about? And no aspirin jokes or anything like that. We're just going to dive into chatting about stuff. And I'd love to hear about what everybody else has been doing, working on. We're not going deep into your life and everything like that, but just sort of what you've been up to. And, um, and again, I'm assuming that the sound and the picture is fine. What? Come on, Brandon. So I saw Brandon at NAB and he told me the great news and super exciting, but I did not know you were this close to having a baby. So that's pretty awesome. Memo, what's happening? Our names in the chat are showing up with crowns and numbers next to them. Really? Well, there you go. That's one thing that's changed in the YouTube universe since I last did a live stream. Maybe I should probably hide this little. Sorry about that little noise there. The microphone is just peeking into frame ever so slightly. Shame on me for making an adjustment to it right before the live stream. And now I think that's back. So, yeah, Brandon is here. He's getting good night's sleep at the moment. That is clearly going to change in the very near future. And that's okay. That's part of what being a parent is about. So there you go. Thank you, DJ. Um, so what are we going to talk about? It's been a while. I think that there have been things. What's with the wristwatch? It's a wristwatch. What are you talking about, Memo? I mean, I can give you the story if you want the story. I guess we'll go with that. And uh, it's it's got sentimental value. It was given to me by my uncle. There's sort of a story behind it. It's a promotional watch for Atlantic Records for, I believe, their 40th anniversary, which was back in the 80s, which kind of fits with the set. But there's really not much more of a story to it than that. And so I got it, had some scratches on it. It was also fogging up a little. I took it to a local jeweler. They resealed the back, they buffed the front, and I'm wearing a watch now. I had to get another band because the old one fell apart. That's the story. That's all I got for you. Um, I've held my first Alexa Mini on set since the last time you were here. What do you mean you held it? You just held it like it was in your hands and then somebody rushed over to you and grabbed it and said, "That's enough, David. You're not allowed to hold this anymore." I'm assuming it was the camera you used on that production. I'm not sure. I've done quite a few productions with Alexa cameras. Never to date shot with the Alexa 35, which I would love to do, but I've shot with other Alexa cameras, and never with the 65 or the 265. Um, but one day, and there's something coming from Ari tomorrow. Ari. So there you go. Want to know what you've been up to, what's on the horizon. Well, great loaded question from Brandon. Um, as you know, if you've been following along, I decided at episode 500 to stop doing the daily drop. It had really run its course. I think, this happens with things, and it wasn't just a matter of whether or not the channel was growing or not. There's a time limit to everything in the world, in life. And that particular series had sort of gone to the place where it was ready to take a rest, to be retired. And and so I decided that the series was over. And this is sort of coinciding with where I think my interests and also where I think the industry is going to a degree. This is not a blanket statement, but it's clear that with very recently, especially with generative AI, that will be a tool in our toolbox. So I've got to figure shit out. I've got to spend time, which I have been spending time, kind of sorting out for myself where I want the focus to be, especially related to content that I'm creating, the things that I'm talking about. And that doesn't mean there won't be basic camera and lighting and sound stuff, that there won't be, more traditional, but I'm starting to sort it out right now. And I think that I'm getting more clarity because I'm having and have more time to spend doing that. Even though I'm getting sucked into the normal, you've got to get more business in the door, and that's a separate discussion. But um, but yeah, so I've got 3 subscriptions right now that are on a monthly basis. One is with Runway, which has been doing a lot of stuff. They have this new model or feature that's coming out. It's been released to some high end um, partners and subscribers, but look looks to be being released Aleph, I think is how you say ALEPH, um, very very soon. To I have a pro subscription, and then the promise there is some stuff that I think will leapfrog eventually some other technologies. And we can talk about Gen AI as much as or as little as you want during the live stream. And then I have a subscription to Luma Labs AI's Dream Machine, probably the one I've spent the least amount of time in, and then LTX Studio. These are all web based UIs, and that's a good and a bad thing. Um, you know, some of them leave a lot or a little to be desired in terms of workflow and where things are and just sort of the UI experience. But the potential for some of the things that you can do using these models and these solutions is pretty crazy. Um, Looks like a fly got in here. Well, I'll handle that later. All right. So let's DJ says I'm only allowed to hold cannons and black magics, but I do so tenderly. He's kidding, but of course. David says I was a gaffer on a music video and helped the camera department mounting the camera on a truck. Oh, you mounted it. Okay, there you go. I didn't mean that in a weird way. And yes, Brandon, my son is working a little bit more with me. He's done with high school now, and he's just starting work, but he's just shooting these little shorts. So he's coming up with questions, and then he does these little 30-second things that I'm going to start pushing out, and we'll see what happens. Um, and those will be more basic. Those will be more sort of tips or recommendations or things like that. So we'll see where that goes. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but that's basically what I've been doing. So I've been going down rabbit holes, and I've been doing and finishing up some projects for some clients on some other stuff. And then hopefully some other projects are going to start to um, get off the ground soon. The other thing that I've been doing, which is something that I can't really report on in terms of success or not at this point is because the production landscape is changing so rapidly, is changing so quickly. While I'm looking at Gen AI and combining Gen AI with traditional production, which I think is really the lane that I'm going to go down, is how do you take that knowledge base that you have and the things that you're doing with regular production and combine, augment that, work with that with generative AI, especially in a video sense, to, produce what you're producing. But I've also decided recently to put a little bit of focus more on local. And what I mean by that is we just recently rejoined our local chamber of commerce. There's definitely some pretty interesting businesses, companies, organizations, etc., that are in my general area that are not necessarily within the videography kind of lane, right? So it's not about covering somebody's, wedding or event unless it was something that was on a larger scale. And it's not necessarily about doing something like commercials for local car dealerships. It's more along the lines of, companies, organizations that are trying to tell stories, case studies, corporate video, things like that. And we started to do that locally prior to COVID, which was not long after, like we moved here in 2017 to Oregon. COVID happened in 2020. And so there was sort of like this ramp up of things that we were going to do. And then the bottom fell out. And we said, it doesn't make sense for us to do that at this time. But now we're going to put a little bit of focus more locally. And I think there could be good opportunity there. So I can report on that a little bit more in the future, depending on whether or not I think that's a successful strategy. I know a lot of companies that do video production do focus locally, and it's a double edged sword because, on one hand, you can pick up local work, but oftentimes that's pretty low paying work. But on the other hand, you might find that there's a couple of companies, and I'm not talking about Nike, even though that's not too far away from me, but the sort of mid-sized companies that need to generate for internal or external purposes video. And it's generative AI is not on their radar. That's not part of what they're looking for. They're looking to tell stories. They're looking for exposure for their products or services. They're looking for training materials, whatever it is. Um, to attract new employees. Whatever the purpose is, video is obviously a pretty successful way to do that nowadays. So I'll let you know how that's going, but that's kind of what's going on in my corner of the ring. And again, I'd love to hear what's happening on your side. But as always with the live stream, the thing that hasn't changed is just talking about gear, camera, lighting, sound, projects that you have coming up, and stuff like that. So let's let's get that going. Yeah, yeah. There's some good wineries in our town. In fact, oddly enough, Brandon, my son, is starting to work at one of them, not the one that we met up at. Oddly enough, well, not oddly, that particular place, Willamette Valley Vineyards, um, opened up prior to when I saw you a new winery very close to where we were, 10 minutes away. And so they've closed that tasting room in McMinnville. And that's just recently. But my son is going to be working at a different winery, which has a kitchen, and he's going to be there as not a server, but kind of front, back of house kind of thing. Great. We got a question coming in from Mr. DJ Succotash. Would you imagine a lot of the local work to be based around internal training sort of pieces? That's a big business all by itself, especially for some companies. Yes, I think to a degree, Sonny, that's true. I think that um, there's a couple of companies in particular that I talked to the chamber about, and one of them is a company locally that does white label manufacturing. They actually make customized like energy bars. And so, for instance, they're the ones who are making Bear Bells here in the US. I don't know for the entire country or not. They're a Belgium based company, and they are expanding. And just by chance, they happen to choose a local McMinnville, Oregon location as their U.S. manufacturing headquarters. Crazy, but true. We also have the Evergreen Aviation based here. There's some other really interesting companies that could use, I think, internal communication needs to be met, but also business to business, some of it business to consumer. It's really early days. We just rejoined actually this week, so we're gonna see where that goes. Yeah. Okay. What said the DP said? Here, hold this. I'm like thinking I'm holding the cash equivalent of a nice car, and it was heavy. No, a really nice car. Hey, Alexa Mini, a little less now, but you know, Mini LF, expensive. Um, yeah. There you go. Cool. All right. So, what other questions do we have? Happy to answer any questions related to what I'm doing or what you're doing or what you're thinking about doing, anything about things that are just sort of stirring around in your head. We can talk about new equipment. You know, it's questionable at times how important it is to upgrade or not. Um, so there you go. It was the LF. There you go. Large format, which doesn't make things confusing at all because really it's just a full frame 35 millimeter sensor. When I think LF, I personally think for large format, I think more in the realm of medium format, and I think about sensor sizes that are larger than 35 millimeter. But there you go. Brandon, that's a loaded question. Tells your findings on Gen AI. Early days and happening so rapidly. I think what I will tell you is that um, what's been released in the last 6 months or so is really telling in terms of how much of a creative tool generative AI can be for us going forward. This is not a hard sell. Look, I am as cautious about this particular subject matter as probably anybody else. And if we just for a moment, and I say just for a moment, take the ethical and legal considerations out of the conversation, what I am finding is that the more time I spend with these tools, the more I realize how clunky they are in some respects. The more I realize, though I had a suspicion, how um, non-intuitive they can be, and then also how much work it can be to realize what is in your head. That said, we've made huge leaps in the last 6 months or so in terms of continuity, consistency. These things are the key to being able to tell longer form stories. So there's no doubt in my mind at this point in time that stop it, David. At this point in time, that these tools will be useful to us in telling stories. And at this point in time, there's no doubt in my mind that generative AI, video based, will replace a huge, huge percentage of stock imagery and video and also short form content. So, commercials, get ready for the holiday season because we are going to see so many generative AI based commercials. They're already happening, and there you go. You don't have to apologize. Sorry, operating a drill press while typing. Piece of advice, Brandon. Maybe not. Maybe not doing those two things at the same time. I have not used Adobe's Firefly in the timeline, to answer your question. I am not a Creative Cloud user. My main editor is, but it's just not part of it. I have a subscription to Envato, which has some AI features inside of it. I've tested some of those, but I'm really primarily focused on generative AI for video based applications. And I'm not saying Firefly can't do that. I'm just trying to test different models and, drop about 30 or so dollars per month on those, drop certain ones, keep other ones. So I have about another 2 weeks on these three. I'm pretty confident I'll keep the subscription to Runway at the moment. LTX Studio and Dream Machine are sort of up in the air at the moment. I'm going to spend some more time. LTX Studio is pretty deep in terms of capabilities and also sort of possibilities, but I'm not sure that I love the workflow. It may be great. It's sort of like a studio in a box, but when that's not running locally, it can be a little cumbersome, but we'll see. All right, here we go. The day. Okay, what else are we reading here? Let me go over here. So I have a long question. A guy on a Discord chat asked about using an FX9 in open gate, but not with an anamorphic lens, hoping he could just use the larger sensor space for reframing. I don't really use the FX9. I mean, FS7 and FS7 Mark II were cameras that I used a ton. But FX9 maybe has been on one or two projects that I've done. So I don't have a lot of hands-on experience with that. I guess the next thing to ask DJ is, does it have open gate, like full open gate? Are you using, and what's the size of the inherent sensor in there? And I'm sorry that I don't know. Um, I think you're right in terms of it covering the whole sensor. I think it really depends on the glass. I mean, that is a full frame 35 millimeter camera. So there are probably lenses that have a large enough circle, image circle that they can cover that sensor. I don't know for sure. But there are definitely people who are using spherical lenses with open gate to be able to reframe and be able to use that for if the application is to do 16 by 9 and 9 by 16. Maybe there's a different reason to do that, but I don't know the answer like completely off of the top of my head. But it's a good conversation point for sure. um let's see what we got. What else we got? Could you shim those lenses just to work if they were coming up vignetting? Maybe, possibly. I guess it just depends, I mean, the other, yeah, I don't know. Because obviously, if you switch from a full frame to a Super 35, if you go to a crop mode, that's then you lose all the benefits of the open gate. But to my knowledge, you don't have to use, maybe I'm wrong about this, and again, I have very limited experience with anamorphic lenses. I've shot on them a few times. Um, but my understanding is that there are spherical lenses that will cover an open gate sensor, and you don't necessarily have to use anamorphic lenses for that application. Um, but I'm not 100% sure. So I think it would require a little bit more internet sleuthing. Uh, yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, if you find more information out about that, DJ, let me know because I'd like to find out some more about that kind of stuff. All right, what do we got? More questions, more conversation. I always say that the main topics that we talk about gear wise are camera, lighting, and sound. We can absolutely talk about producing, pre production, where things are going. We can now add generative AI to the mix of conversation. But food's always on the table. We can always talk about cooking and all of that kind of stuff as well. And if you want to bring up something related to that subject, I won't ignore it in the chat because of my borderline actual obsession with food and stuff like that. No, there's no, Brandon, it's a tough one. I think this is definitely the direction that I'm going with in terms of uh my commitment to creating educational content. It might be nice if there was some food related stuff tied into it, but I think ultimately what's going to happen, what's up, Darren, is there's at least for the stuff that I generate on this channel and that relates to generative AI, that it'll be different for client-based projects, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to place basically everything that I create um, that's generative AI based in uh, a decade that I have a love for, which is the 80s. So whatever I'm creating is going to, and there may be food stuff there too, but it's all going to happen within the 80s. So that's not again true for client-based stuff, but there you go. This is just the best thing that I could find to sort of tip my hat to food and Blade Runner. It's not exactly that, but you know what I'm saying. Um, so it'll get in there somehow, okay? And look, this is for you, DJ, and the '80s, but what are you gonna do? I wish I could dim this one and this one down just a little bit more. The ramen one dims to kind of the exact perfect amount. These are LED based uh, neon signs, and they're super cool because they cost like 30 $35 US, so they're kind of fun to have around. And just because this is a Men at Work album, it's not sexist. It's just very much indicative of the 80s, and they did make these these sneakers back in the 80s as well. So there you go. I did think of you, DJ, when I got that one, to be honest. Okay. 400x aperture storm, third light in the bicolor white light product line from Aperture. They obviously have the 1200x. They have the, actually it's not the, it's only the second one, isn't it? Yes, because we have the 1200X, and then we have the 80C and the 1000C. So this is really the second Blair only, right? Based fixture. And what do I think? What do I think about that? It's not that I didn't know it was coming down the pike, right? I knew we were getting that light. Um, Personally, I would have loved to have seen a 5 or 600 watt version of that light, and maybe that's coming in the future. But for me, when I look at the 1200X, sort of the next logical step down, without going into an X version that would be sort of like the 80, 120, which would make a lot of sense. Um, would have been a like a 5 or 600 watt version personally. So I'm sure it's going to be a great fixture. I'm sure it's going to be bought and used by a lot of people who are looking to have another Storm X light within their ecosystem. Um, but I would have liked to have seen like a 600X version of that with the Blair engine. Personally, that's just my opinion. Um, and of course, in theory, it should fit with all the other stuff. And now they're going to do the Nova, Mark II, which will have the Blair engine in a panel-based thing. Um, yeah, but there are 600 watt lights out there that you can take higher voltage batteries, like 26-volt, and double those up and do that. It has a tiny bit of a spotlight right here, David. But the reason it doesn't have enough of one is because there's a little bit of a problem here with the panels. So if I put too much light here, you notice the problems more. So there's a reason for it. But I mean, I do actually have a special on there. I can hold on, I'll go increase it, but I don't think it's going to be good. Hold on. That's I could bring it in a little bit more and give it a little bit more of a lift. My monitor that I'm looking at for reference right now isn't very bright, but if you have a bright monitor, you'll start to see some of the problems on this seam right here. So there you go. Yes, so there is a special on there, but there's reasons why. Yeah. Okay. So let's see what we got. Yes, it's Killer Light. Want to see some more reviews? Blah blah blah. Yes, about the Ramen Labs thing. That was really fun. There we go. So I wonder if with the 400, the intention was to create an equivalent of the 300 with this system. So they'll get to 600, but 1200 and 400 has you covered for the time being. Yeah, possibly. I would have really liked to have um, seen a 600. I just think it's a day in, day out, more usable fixture. But yeah, what's a special? You're special, Brandon. A special is a term used for a light that's doing a special job, basically, right? So it's a dedicated. You could say that every light is a special, but usually it refers to putting light onto a particular part of the frame, generally to highlight a particular object or area. So it's sort of placed to put a little pop of something there. I hope that's a good enough explanation. But when you're setting it, it's sort of like, let's say you were doing something and you had it's generally not a practical light. It's generally a focusable, light that you would use. That, for instance, let's say I was doing something and I was talking about a product, and as long as I wasn't interacting with it too much, because I'd be crossing the line of where the light was coming in, and I just wanted to put like a little focus on it. So let's say, for instance, this is an example here, but let's just say I was talking about sneakers, trainers if you're in the UK. And behind me on the wall were 3 or 4 new sneakers from Adidas or Nike or Puma or whatever. um, I could put specials on each of those sneakers, and it would just give them a little something, right? There would be a little bit more focus on it. I've also done that in other videos. For instance, I'm talking about Steadicam system, and I'm not picking up the system. We'll put a special on it so it has like a little bit of a spotlight, its own little, that's a good way to describe it. It's sort of a spotlight for a particular object or area within the frame that you want to put a special on. So you are special, but hopefully that makes sense. Um, David, they claim that every light is close to a something. There's a little bit of a game going on here in the lighting world, which is you can get to virtually any lumen level. Not virtually, but you can get to very high lumen levels by using lenses, by using modifiers to focus the light into a much smaller beam angle where it's more concentrated. Reflectors do a similar thing, and you're getting seemingly much more output out of the fixture. The fixture is outputting the same amount of light, but you're using those focusable Fresnels, reflectors, lenses to concentrate that light and get more out of it. And It's a little bit of a marketing game because the reality is that in a lot of lighting situations, while we might want to take a 400 or 600-watt light and get the most output out of it, it wouldn't be practical to do that because we need to fill a bigger area, right? So um, if you think about taking a light that you've concentrated the light to get more output, but you need to fill, let's say, a 6x6 frame. Well, in order to fill the 6x6 frame, you now may need to back that source, that light, that fixture away from what you're pushing it through or bouncing it off in order to fill the actual surface area. And when you do that, you're going to get a lot more fall off. You're going to lose a lot of light. You know how it works. And so ideally, what you're doing is you're getting the maximum output from the light at a particular distance for your application. And, a lot of the times we're working in relatively small spaces. And if we want to do something like take a fixture and then build a book light so we can bounce and then diffuse that light for our subject matter, it's not always about getting a more intense beam angle to get more output because that's going to be so focused you won't be able to fill the thing that you're trying to use as a modifier. Does that make sense? Yeah. Uh okay, DJ. I might do that. If you send me oh my god. Maybe I'll do that. I don't know. I definitely don't have a poster of the specials or vinyl. I mean, these are all record covers. Well, all. I have many behind this wall over here, or this fake, uh, these flats. There you go. I love lamp. What I maybe it's because it's the middle of the day or something else, David, but I don't know what that means. I love lamp. But tell me, is this the tagline for the series? I don't know. Well, there you go. All right. Well, things are moving along here. What do we got now? Come on. Next thing. Hopefully that answers your question, Brandon. Um, I would venture to guess that you have set up and used a special yourself in the past. You just haven't called it a special, and it's not an uncommon sort of production thing to to s- to use a special or specials. There you go. All right, what's next? What are we talking about, kids? As with every live stream, it's driven by you. It's your questions, your comments. Sometimes it can just be one question that takes us off and we're going for 20, 30 minutes on it. Um, there you go. Oh, I love lamp. Okay, now I'm tracking. There you go. You're kidding me, right? Uh oh, we're Ron Burgundy, not The Office. Oh, Steve Carell, but from Ron Burgundy or Steve Carell? Which one from Anchorman? Which character? Is it Ron Burgundy who says that? I guess so, based on your answer. Um, Brandon, you're killing me. I'm not equipped to handle your emails right now, but I'm gonna fire up my email and see. You are nothing but consistent, and I mean that in a loving way. Um, I wouldn't. Are you talking about the little thing behind the person, like the gobo thing? I wouldn't call that a special. A special is generally focused on a particular object or place. You could say that the background is an object, but it's really to highlight a particular thing. Um, the brick. What do you mean the brick? Um, Referencing the highlights on the plants. Oh, those plants. Let me see. I'm not critiquing this right now. I wouldn't necessarily consider that a special. I would say because it's such a uh, specific kind of pattern or the way the light is breaking up, you could maybe call it that. But generally, a special in my mind, which may not be the correct, you know, mind to be describing this, is it's very specific to putting like a glow or a little bit of focus on a particular object. The goal usually isn't to distract the viewer, but it can be to bring their attention to something. Oftentimes, it's just to sort of give it a little bit of a lift. So when David said, you know, this could use a little something, then a special is that something. It just sort of gives a little bit more focus to it. But um, you know, if you think about Raiders of the Lost Ark and he goes in that first basically scene and there's, you know, he has to do the swap with the bag of sand and then, you know, the idol and stuff like that. That idol definitely has a special on it, right? He comes in and there's sort of this glow and you can sort of see that. Um yeah, there you go. Ibrahim, how are you? Um we're kind of on a there's a there's a there's an Anchorman Ron Burgundy tear happening in here right now. Um, but there you go. Yeah. So I'm not going to put a post right now, Brandon, into a scene because it's just a little bit too much of a lift at the moment and will be a little too clunky. But I got the email and we can talk about it some more. And if it's something that we want to bring up or have a discussion about more in the future, we can do that as well. All right. There you go. There you go. All right, so what's next on the agenda? We got about 20 minutes. We don't have to use up the whole hour, but I definitely want to be covering things that you're interested in talking about related to, again, cameras, lighting, sound, production, things that you're working on. Or if you're just trying to sort things out, you know, I had a abysmal, horrible answer for DJ on the open gate spherical versus anamorphic lenses question, but I think we can get to the bottom of that pretty quickly. It just won't be in this episode. Um, what am I entertaining the thought? I mean, I looked at it. The thought of putting it into the episode, you're killing me. You are killing me. Um, but we can definitely talk more about it. And the frames look nice. I mean, you know, it's always tricky with bald people with that little highlight that's on the head. And one of the ways that you can, you know, sort of handle that is you could put a small little, you could fly a little modifier. Oh, you can still see the damn microphone. It's dark, but there you go. I'm just seeing it there as my hands crossing. You could put like a little, like a road rag, silk, or something above the person to just sort of soften that light that's hitting the baldiness of their head. So there you go. All right, let's see what we got. What do I think of all the Lumix hype with this new generation of S1 hybrids? I feel like there is so much hype behind these. Seems like marketing push to have people specifically talk about how they're switching from Sony or Canon. I mean, LumaProds, this is a standard operating procedure within the industry, right? And the influencer creator sort of way of um, pushing that the grass is always greener. And I'm going to say this, you know, I go through phases of what my favorite cameras are and the cameras that I like to use. But we're in a place right now where um and I feel like a broken record saying this or a parrot just saying something over and over again. All of the cameras are pretty great right now. And that's actually pretty true about lighting as well. You know, we kind of get gear lust and gear envy when new things are released. And the reality is that while there will be improvements in each generation of a new camera that's being released on the market or light that's being released on the market, we've sort of hit a point in the last 24 to 36 months where everything is pretty dang great, right? So when you're thinking about a new camera system, you have to determine whether or not that camera system or that ecosystem that camera is and the lenses that are available for it are going to give you something that is not just incrementally, but considerably better than what it is that you're using right now. A part of that might be dictated by something like you have a longer term project, or the type of work you're going to be producing needs something like a rock solid autofocus system. So then you start looking at solutions from Sony and from Canon, because they are really the two companies that are sort of at the forefront of reliable day in, day out AF systems, right? There was a time where it was all Canon's game. And then Sony came up pretty fast and said, we've got the best AF system in the world. And now with the new version of what I have here in the C400 and the C80, I think Canon is back in that game again. But when we're looking at some of the other camera manufacturers, while they have some amazing things going on with their cameras, autofocus is not the thing that is the selling point. That's not the thing that's getting you, you know, that. So you have to consider the other features of those cameras and whether or not those are compelling enough for you to either switch to another brand or to upgrade from the brand that you're already in. So there's always going to be that's why I've always tried to make sure that, for the most part, as much as I can, that the content that I'm creating is foundationally um, based on education or on actually using that product. Even when I've created sponsored content for a manufacturer, I have a couple of new videos that I'm just finishing up for Calibrite, having to do with their color checker. This one right here, the Passport Video 2, that it's not about talking about how it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's how do you actually use that product in DaVinci Resolve or Premiere to get a consistent result. And fortunately or unfortunately, when you're using things like targets, charts, it's not really paint by numbers. There's an apparency that it's paint by numbers. You'll see short videos that show you that you can use a product like this or something from another manufacturer, and you can, click three things and you're going to get perfect color, contrast, and exposure. And that's just absolute bullshit. It's not the way it works. And so, while I would love to produce a tight 3 to 5 minute video on how to use a product like that, we're going to wind up with a 15 to 20 plus minute video to show you how to do that, because what's the point? Like, we need the other aspirational, inspirational, drool based content. It gets us excited about things, and we have gear lust, and we have to buy new things, and that is the point of those things. But does that actually mean that if you purchase that particular piece of equipment that you're going to be better at what you do? No, there are times where the feature sets in that equipment are going to allow you, as an educated person who knows how the tech works, you have a pretty good grasp on your craft related to what it is that you do. Those features are going to help you do your job more efficiently and faster. And we're seeing that both in production and post. So I'm not saying that a new product is not useful. You just have to make decisions as to when investing in those products makes sense to you. So it's a long-winded answer to your question about Lumix cameras. I think it's a broader conversation overall. It was time for my company to invest in new cameras because the cameras we had been using definitely didn't have some of the features that I wanted to have in a system. So the C400 and the C80 from Canon share the same sensor. They have virtually the same recording formats. They have slightly different form factors, and there's some features in the C400 that I can tap into, like Gen Lock and some other things that I can't tap into with the C80, which is why I've decided to have this be my A camera, the C80 to be a B, and I'm very seriously considering getting a third camera, which would be another C80, because I do find myself in production situations where we've got at least two people in the frame, which to me means we need a master and probably at least two cameras for singles, right? So there's a lot of things to consider. There's no one right answer to all of that. Um, but there you go. Brandon says, I have no idea how to use those, but I'd love to know how to use what. Let me know what that is, because I'm not tracking the timeline. You might be talking about using like a little silk or something. Basically, what you're trying to do is you're either trying to soften the light that's hitting the top of a bald person, or you are trying to eliminate the light. So you could use a flag as well to do that, where you have something that's set out of frame, which is just blocking that light from above. Placement of your light is also part of that. For instance, my key light right now is a little bit sidey. I could turn that a little bit more towards me, but it's going to introduce and reveal the uglies of this background, which I have to decide how I want to deal with that or not. And it will also increase the amount of highlight that I have on my head. I'm just going to walk over and I'm going to pan that light a little bit more towards me, and you should see that instantly. Hold on one second. All right, there you go. I'm also a little bit overexposed now because that light is coming directly towards me, but you can see the problem areas that I was talking about before. I've definitely got a lot more light on here. The C400 handles highlights really well, so that's not a huge deal. Um, but this is being set in a certain way for a number of reasons. I'm just going to pan it back. Why am I panning it back? Because it's driving me crazy. That's why. Yeah, somewhere around there-ish. All right, coming back, kids. There you go. All right. I'm gonna be a grandpa before the A7 S4 arrives. All right. Ibrahim says, is it possible that Panasonic will release the EVA 2? I seriously doubt it. Or a new model to compete with the Sony FX6. What features do you expect the new model to have to compete in the market? I mean, look, I don't have a lot of um, hope for Panasonic coming out with an EVA 2. It would be really nice if they came back into what I call the digital cinema camera space, as opposed to just hanging out in the mirrorless camera space. But each company has to sort of identify who their market is and who they're selling to and who's going to buy from them. And honestly, over the years, I've had a lot of love for Panasonic. I mean, I really started to shoot video again on the DVX 100 B, which I still have behind this false wall here. I guess it's not a false wall, it's an actual wall. It just is made of flats. But there you go. I will do more stuff, David, on the light meter stuff. It's definitely on the docket and will be part of it. It's just going to get integrated into some of the stuff that I'm doing. But it's definitely the plan. Oh, Brandon, you mean the color checker? Yes. So I think, especially if you use Resolve or you use Premiere, that the videos that we're creating for Calibrite will help you understand that, because they are more in depth and they kind of go into that. Um, Yes. So DJ says for color work, I have to say I find checkers really helpful to get a sense of where is this image at, but I stopped using them for actual applied corrective manipulations. It is using charts, targets, chip charts, whatever you want to call them, really have pluses and minuses. And the reality is that, as I said, it's not paint by numbers, right? So your input footage um, is is definitely a part of that equation, but it's it's part tech, it's part science, and it's part like dark magic. And there are times where you'll go about doing something where you take the data that's coming in from one of these targets. And if you paint by numbers and you just do it a certain way, thinking that you're going to get the same result every single time, you're not. And I'm not a colorist. Color is not my expertise. But going back and forth with my editor, who does a lot of color correction and does a lot of stuff like that, we struggled, especially with Premiere, because Premiere has sort of like redone their whole color engine, and even the workflow that you might have used before is not always resulting in the same thing. The tools are also different. Resolve is very deep in terms of tool set, so it's much easier to become very specific and granular about adjustments that you're making. But there's so many aspects to this and how people like to work and their workflow that, like for DJ, it might be more along the lines of, okay, well, that's a reference point that gives me an idea, but I have a calibrated monitor. I know where I'm trying to take this image. I know how to use these tools, so you may never use that. So it totally depends on the person and what they're doing. But if people are looking at and want to invest in a product like that, it's about making people understand that it's going to take pushing and pulling your image to get your desired result. And there's so many variations in terms of your workflow and how you approach that with each one of these NLEs, each one of these tools that you're using. Um, and it's not going to be right for everybody. So that's kind of part of the deal as well. But they can be helpful. I will say that, and you're bringing this up, I'm just kind of going through the chat right now, that when we use this particular target here, the chroma one, and we're isolating these colors right here, that we do show the automatic workflow of basically putting a grid overlay, but we really are focusing on a manual adjustment using the information coming from those targets. Um, so, because just consistently getting a good result using the auto feature doesn't seem to give you a consistent desired result. So, it it's kind of useful as maybe a starting point, but we are leaning towards, at least with the videos I'm producing, a more manual approach to getting a desired result using Resolve and Premiere rather than trying to do it the automatic way. Certain aspects of it can sort of be done when you're white balancing your image and doing that, but even then, depending on what your source footage is and where everything's mapped and where everything's landing, you're probably going to have to push and pull and do some manual stuff. I hope that makes sense. But we're not leaning on the auto. We show it, but then basically say that you're going to be a lot better off taking the information that these targets are giving you when you're looking at your scopes, a waveform, a vector scope, and use this data to help you, get things to a baseline, right? Because what we're trying to do when we capture footage is, we want to make sure, yes, that your white balance is correct, because depending on where you want to push and pull things, but then your exposure, your contrast, your color is all at a baseline level. Yeah. Okay. Um, Good. David, I have been to Hot Rod Cameras in Portland. It's very small. I've been there a couple of times, and it's it's kind of like an annex in a way. Um, but because Ilya, who's the owner, lives up here now, he decided to open up a smaller place up there, which is, it's a cool place. It's just very small, and it's not like the LA place, but it's good. What's for dinner? Tonight, what's for dinner? I think we're gonna do. We kind of do like a so like a it's like a big chopped salad, and then we thick slice bacon in the oven. So it's kind of like a BLT salad. But then oftentimes what I'll do is I'll take chicken breasts and I'll marinate those and I'll sear those off, more sort of Mediterranean flavors. So take the chicken breast, cut it in half, right? Not butterfly, but just cut it in half so you have two thinner halves of the breast. And then put that into a bowl that has olive oil, oregano, thyme, sometimes basil, salt, pepper, lemon zest, secret. What's up, Brad? And then just kind of let that little garlic powder, could be fresh garlic, and just let that sort of marinate for a little while. Shove it in the fridge at least for half hour, 45 minutes. And then what you're going to do is take that out and you put it into a ripping hot pan. You just sear it on both sides. And then once it's got some color on both sides, then the fun begins. Then you can go in and you can basically deglaze with a little bit of white wine. You could add some lemon to the chicken. You could do both. And then, sort of, my little secret is then add like a chicken bone broth. The one that's great is from Costco. They sell it in a six package box. It's much deeper in flavor than uh, chicken stock or chicken broth. And so the bone broth has a much more intense flavor. And then you put that in with the chicken out and just sort of reduce it down until it almost gets to a syrupy consistency, and then throw the chicken back in there, and then just sort of like keep turning it in there until it soaks in all of that. And then that's basically that. And then Jess said we're going to add a zucchini and rosemary from the garden, with the Jess salad. Homemade focaccia we've made. Did she say that? Oh yeah, she's making homemade focaccia now with zucchini and rosemary. Ooh, I like that. Maybe we'll also, if you get DiNapoli um, whole peeled tomatoes with basil in the can, you can buy them in 6 packs on Amazon. That probably the best canned tomatoes I've ever had. I mean, San Marzano are amazing and pretty comparable, but these DiNapolis from California are ridiculous. They're almost sweet in flavor. They don't have that tartness. They definitely don't have that tin taste to them. And what we can do is just take that, take out some of those tomatoes and just sort of crush them and put that into the focaccia as well, which is absolutely delicious. I don't know if we're doing that tonight. Jess is in charge of that. But basically, it's a big chopped salad with bacon, chicken, and then whatever this delicious focaccia is that she's got going on. So there you go. And you can take focaccia. We do it with our own sourdough starter and stuff when Jess makes her own bread, but you prove it for a long time. It gets, in high hydration, and then you get it so it's all lubbly jubbly. And then you can put that out and fit it to a greased pan. And you just kind of knead it with your hands and then use those little dimples. You can put olives in there. You can put crushed tomatoes in there. You can put zucchini and rosemary, and then you bake that off. Oftentimes, it's really nice to kind of use an olive oil butter base in the bottom so that when it's in a high heat oven, it gets crispy on the edges. And this wouldn't be sort of that alien if you were thinking about making a grandma's or a Sicilian pizza. Not necessarily that you have to have the butter, but like a heavy, bottomed pan would be really good. Okay, so of course crushed garlic. Come on, but real garlic, not that kind that's already crushed in the thing. Let's get back to cameras. It's great to have a new EVA model release so we can combine it with the S5 2X, and for those who started with this model to keep up with their career and move to a higher level. I don't disagree. I just there hasn't been a lot of murmurings and rumors about us getting anything like that from Panasonic lately. I would love it if they surprised us. We've got Fuji coming in with what we will have to see what it becomes with the Eterna, but that's a medium format digital cinema camera. Jarlick, yeah, Jarlick is not what I'm looking for. I will sometimes, Brandon. I'm digressing for or going back. Buy if in a pinch I need it, and you really have to look at the quality of the garlic. But you walk into like a Trader Joe's, and they'll have peeled whole cloves of garlic. But if you see it's becoming discolored, definitely don't buy it. And it's the type of product that I would buy and use right away, not leave in my refrigerator, because let's be honest, it's not a hard lift to take a head of garlic and to break it up and to get individual cloves anyway. So, yeah, you get the basic idea. So, this is a normal live stream for the C47. We're kind of bouncing between cameras and lights and food, which is kind of what we do here. Um, and I think that's about it. I think we've kind of done our thing, and it's been nice to do this. And I'd like to do the live streams a little more regularly again. I don't want to commit to saying that they're going to be weekly, because I hate committing to something and it not actually panning out that way. Which is why the header on the website doesn't say, daily episodes now. It doesn't say weekly live stream, because that's sort of false advertising. And I have to sort this out. But I'm not gone. I haven't disappeared, and this community is still very much here. And if you need to reach out, you can always send an email to contact at the c47.com and keep the dialogue going. And I'm here. I'm just trying to figure shit out. And more specifically, how we combine traditional production with generative AI. That is not going to be the only focus, but I think it is something that we need to figure out. We absolutely need to figure out what this thing is. And it's such a fast moving target that I don't know if it's possible to do that. But I think there's some stuff to cover here and to talk about. And if we can steep it in reality as much as possible, then that's a great thing. Brandon says, so great value brand with a yellow reduced price sticker is a no go. I'll let you answer that question. Okay. That's what I got for you. I am going to shut this thing down and do a little bit more work. And then I'm heading into the kitchen to help Jess with whatever it is that we are eating for dinner tonight. Last night we did like a chicken Milanese and with like an arugula and tomato and cucumber salad. I reserved the tomatoes separately though, because I made a chimichurri with some leftover chives, which is unconventional, fresh garlic, lots of parsley, crushed red pepper, good olive oil, salt, pepper, and red wine vinegar. And that's a chimichurri. Oftentimes, when I make a chimichurri, I'll use a combination of parsley and cilantro together, and that's a good combination as well. It can go with a lot of different things, but what I did is I marinated the tomatoes in the chimichurri, which was really nice, and then left the rest. And that was actually pretty delicious on the chicken Milanese, which was just sort of made with crushed panko. I'd use rice flour first, and then rubbed the chicken after it had been pounded with crushed garlic, fresh garlic, and then flour, eggs, and then the breadcrumbs seasoned, and then those go into a pan, golden brown, and then a little bit of fresh Parmigiano Reggiano on the top to finish them off. Um, yes, I'd love to do another Cameron Flash soon. I caught up with Caleb recently, so we kind of discussed that. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I have to check in with Ben. And everybody, great having you here. Thank you for coming to the live stream. It's great to continue to have this community and to know that it's not gone. And tell your friends, and we'll see each other soon. I'm going to press the end button. See you soon.